Do you ever find yourself wishing life could just slow down a little? Not because you can't keep up, but because deep down, you want to savor things more. Your mornings, your meals, your walks, your conversations. But then, maybe a little voice in your head says, that's just not how life works anymore. Or maybe someone told you that slowing down is the same as giving up. If you've ever felt that tension, the pull toward a gentler pace, and the pushback of guilt, worry, or doubt, you're not alone. There's a quiet movement that's been growing over the years. It's called slow living. And no, it's not about laziness or dropping out of life. It's about choosing presence over pressure, intention over busyness. But here's the catch. A lot of older adults have been led to believe that slow living isn't for them. Maybe it sounds like a trend for young folks with minimal responsibilities. Or maybe it just seems unrealistic. Today, we're going to talk about that. More importantly, we're going to look at 6 common misconceptions that might be keeping you from fully embracing a slower, more meaningful life, and how to let those old ideas go. This is a conversation worth having because your time, your energy, and your peace of mind, they matter. And if something as simple as shifting a few beliefs could make your days more enjoyable, then that's worth exploring, isn't it? So let's take a closer look at the first big myth that gets in the way. A lot of people think slow living means doing nothing, as if slowing down means you're giving up on being productive or useful. And for many older adults, especially those who grew up in a generation that valued hard work and responsibility, this idea can feel downright insulting. You might think, I don't want to sit around all day. I want to be active. I want to be helpful. I've got things to do. And you know what? That makes perfect sense. Because slow living isn't about doing less. It's about doing things more intentionally. Let me give you an example. Think about your morning routine. Are you racing through it? Coffee, breakfast, emails, errands, all in a blur? Or are you giving yourself time to enjoy your cup of coffee, to look out the window, to notice the quiet before the day begins? That's slow living. It's not about being idle. It's about being present. And actually, many people find they get more done when they approach their day with clarity instead of chaos. One retired teacher I know told me she used to start each day feeling like she was already behind, checking her phone, replying to texts, jumping into tasks without taking a breath. When she began practicing slow living, she didn't stop doing those things. She just gave herself 5 minutes each morning to sit in silence, breathe, and check in with herself. And it changed everything. She still gets things done. She still volunteers and runs her book club and spends time with family. But she does it without feeling like she's constantly chasing the clock. That's the power of intention over speed. Now, let's talk about another common misconception. This idea that slow living is a luxury. Something only wealthy people or those with a lot of free time can afford. Maybe you've heard that, or maybe you've even thought it yourself. And it's understandable. We're used to associating slowing down with retirement trips to Tuscany or long spa weekends. But the truth is, slow living isn't about money. It's about mindset. You don't need to spend a dime to slow down. It can be as simple as choosing to eat your lunch at the table instead of in front of the TV, or calling a friend for a real conversation instead of just scrolling through social media, or taking a walk without earbuds in, just listening to the birds or the sound of your feet on the pavement. One gentleman I spoke with said he thought slow living was something he could never do because his days were packed with doctor's appointments, helping with grandkids, managing the house. But when we looked a little closer, we found little pockets of space he didn't even realize he had. 5 minutes in the car before picking up the kids, he started using that time to listen to calming music instead of news. The 20 minutes before bed, he began reading a few pages of a novel instead of watching TV. Those small shifts brought a sense of calm that rippled into the rest of his day. He didn't need a villa in the countryside to experience slow living. He just needed a few mindful choices. That brings me to the third misconception that trips people up, the belief that slow living is for other people, not for you. Maybe you've seen articles or YouTube videos with soft music and minimalist decor, and you've thought, that's nice, but that's not my life. Maybe your home is filled with the memories of decades, with furniture you love, books you've collected, photos of family and friends. And that's beautiful. Slow living doesn't ask you to change who you are. It invites you to be more of who you are. One woman I met, a former nurse, told me she thought she had to completely change her space to embrace slow living. She felt overwhelmed by the idea of decluttering everything, switching to natural materials, lighting candles every night. But when she let go of the perfect aesthetic, she discovered something much deeper. She didn't have to throw away her things. She just started paying more attention to the things that brought her joy. She rearranged a small corner of her living room with a cozy chair, a lamp, and her favorite books. That became her slow space. Just a place to sit quietly, reflect, maybe journal a little. No big makeover required. Slow living isn't about aesthetics, it's about attention. You don't need to look the part. You don't need to follow a script. You just need to ask yourself, what brings me peace? What makes me feel like I'm really here, living this moment? And if there's one thing that makes slow living incredibly powerful for folks in their 60s, 70s, or beyond, it's the wisdom you already have. You've lived through decades of change, responsibility, growth, and hard-earned lessons. You've seen what matters and what doesn't. That perspective is exactly what slow living is about, focusing on what truly matters and letting go of the rest. You might be thinking, okay, this all sounds nice, but what about my schedule? What about my responsibilities? Isn't slowing down going to throw everything off? That's a very common concern, and it's one we'll gently explore as we continue. Because here's the truth. Slow living doesn't mean giving up structure or responsibilities. It actually gives you a better relationship with them. That's where the fourth misconception comes in. This idea that slowing down will make your life less organized, or that things will fall through the cracks if you don't keep moving fast. But in reality, when we rush, we make more mistakes. We forget things. We feel scattered and overwhelmed. Slowing down doesn't make you forgetful. It helps you focus. Think about this. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you went there? Of course, we all have. But did that moment happen during a calm, focused time, or in the middle of a chaotic day when your brain was juggling 10 different things at once? Often, it's the busyness, not the aging, that scrambles our minds. When we give ourselves time to pause, to move through the day with awareness, our minds have space to catch up with our bodies. One man I spoke with shared how he used to scribble down endless to-do lists, only to lose them or feel overwhelmed by them. After learning about slow living, he tried something simple, writing down just 3 things he wanted to focus on each day. Just 3. And that small shift helped him not only stay organized, but actually enjoy crossing those things off. He said it felt like reclaiming control, not just of his time, but of his energy. And that's what so many of us are looking for. Not a life without tasks, but a life where the tasks don't steal all our peace. It's interesting, isn't it? How easily we assume that slowing down equals losing control, when in fact, it might be the key to regaining it. Now, there's another belief that holds people back from embracing slow living, and it's a sneaky one. It's the feeling that it's too late for me. Maybe you've said those words. Or maybe they've whispered themselves quietly into your thoughts. I'm too set in my ways. I missed the window. This works for younger folks, not for someone like me. Let me tell you something from the heart. It's never too late to choose how you want to live. I once met a woman in her 70s who had lived a very fast-paced, high-pressure life. She raised 4 kids, worked full-time, took care of her aging parents, all while barely taking a moment to breathe. She told me that after retirement, she felt this strange emptiness. Not because she didn't have anything to do, but because she didn't know how to do nothing. Sitting still made her anxious. Resting felt unnatural. But slowly, she began to challenge that discomfort. She started with 10 minutes a day. Just 10 quiet minutes sitting on her back porch. No phone, no plans, just the sky and the trees. At first it felt awkward, but then something shifted. Those 10 minutes became her favorite part of the day. She began journaling, then painting, then hosting small tea gatherings with old friends. She said, I didn't know how much of my life I'd missed by always moving so fast. It's never too late to create a life that feels like yours. Even if the habits of busyness are deep, they can be softened. Even if your calendar is full, you can begin to approach each item with a calmer heart. Slow living isn't a big leap. It's a gentle turn. And while we're here, there's something else I want to touch on, something that often goes unsaid but affects many older adults. It's the idea that slowing down makes you invisible. That if you stop doing, stop chasing, stop proving, people will stop noticing you. And that can feel scary, especially in a culture that celebrates productivity and youth. It's easy to feel like slowing down means fading into the background. But the truth is, your presence, your voice, your experience, they matter more than ever. And slow living isn't about disappearing. It's about showing up in a different way. A friend of mine, who's in her early 80s, told me that slow living helped her reclaim her sense of self. She said, "For years, I was everybody's something. Mom, wife, grandma, volunteer. I love all those roles, but I didn't realize how much of me got buried in them. Through small, intentional choices, like taking a walk every morning without her phone, cooking meals just for herself with care, writing in a gratitude journal, she started to feel seen again. Not by the world, necessarily, but by herself. And that made all the difference." Slow living reminds us that we don't need to perform to be valuable. We don't need to hustle to be worthy. Just being here, awake to the moment, is enough. And when you start to see yourself with that kind of gentleness, the world starts to reflect it back. There's a story I love about a man in his 60s who decided to leave his watch at home for a week. Not forever, just a week. He wanted to see what would happen if he stopped checking the time every 15 minutes. At first, it was disorienting. He felt off balance. But by the third day, he noticed something strange. He was more on time than usual. Because instead of racing the clock, he was moving with the flow of his day. Eating when he was hungry, resting when he was tired, showing up early simply because he wasn't distracted. That little experiment became a shift in how he related to time. "I used to feel like time was chasing me," he said. "Now I feel like I'm walking alongside it." It's amazing how something so small, leaving the watch at home, can open up a new way of living. And that's really what slow living is about. Not changing everything, not becoming someone new, just noticing again, reconnecting with what you already have, creating space for the parts of yourself that got left behind in the rush. Now, as we keep exploring this together, there are still a couple of big myths we haven't touched yet. Ones that go deeper than schedules or routines. Ones that speak to the heart of what it means to grow older with intention and with joy. Because sometimes, it's not the pace of life that needs to change, it's how we feel about that pace. And that brings us to a big one. The idea that slow living is just about doing less, instead of feeling more. People often think it's about emptying your schedule or sitting around all day with nothing to do. But slow living isn't about being idle. It's about being present. It's about choosing quality over quantity, depth over speed, meaning over motion. And yes, it may look quieter from the outside, but inside, it's deeply rich. One man told me that he used to feel guilty if he wasn't being productive. Even reading a book felt like a luxury. But after a health scare, he started reevaluating what his days were filled with. He said something that really stuck with me. "I realized I was filling time instead of living it." So he started reading again, not to check something off a list, but just because he loved it. He started writing letters by hand, gardening slowly, without rushing to finish, talking to his neighbors more. These weren't accomplishments in the traditional sense, but they made his life feel whole again. And that's the secret. Slow living doesn't make your days emptier. It makes them fuller, in a different, gentler way. And finally, there's one more belief that holds so many people back, even if they don't say it out loud. It's the idea that slow living is selfish. That taking time for yourself, saying no to obligations, or putting your peace first somehow makes you a bad parent, grandparent, friend, or citizen. But let me ask you this. How can you give your best to others if your own well is empty? I once met a woman who had spent her entire adult life in service of others. She was a caregiver, a volunteer, a church leader, you name it. She was beloved in her community, but she was exhausted. Every time she thought about taking a break, even just for a day, she felt guilty, like she was letting people down. But her daughter gently reminded her, "Mom, when you rest, you're not taking something from us. You're giving yourself back to us." That moment shifted everything. She began creating boundaries, not to push people away, but to show up with a full heart when she did say yes. She started blocking out quiet afternoons just for herself. And something beautiful happened. Her energy returned. Her laughter came back. Her presence felt lighter, even to those around her. Slow living doesn't mean turning your back on others. It means showing up better, with clarity, warmth, and intention. It means you stop pouring from an empty cup and start living from a place of balance. You begin to see that rest is not a reward, it's a right. and you realize that peace doesn't have to be earned. It's something you can choose every single day. So, if any part of you has felt unsure about whether this kind of life is possible, let me reassure you, it is. And you don't have to go off-grid or change everything overnight. You just have to start noticing, start choosing, start believing that your time is yours. Maybe that means taking your morning coffee on the porch instead of in front of the news. Maybe it's calling an old friend for a real, unhurried chat. Maybe it's learning to say no to something that drains you, even if you've always said yes. Or simply sitting in stillness for 5 minutes and realizing you don't have to do anything to be worthy of peace. You've earned this chapter of life, not just for surviving it, but for living it. And it can be beautiful, not because it's fast or flashy, but because it's yours. Your pace, your rhythm, your joy. If any of this resonates with you, I hope you'll carry it into your own day. Try one small change. Let it be enough. And watch how even a quiet shift can create a whole new way of being. If you've ever had thoughts like, I'm too old to change, or this isn't for people like me, I want to tell you, you are exactly the person slow living was made for. You've lived a life full of movement, of duty, of caring for others. This is your invitation to care for you. And if you've already begun exploring this way of life, maybe even without realizing it, I'd love to hear about it. What changes have you made? What moments of slowness have brought you peace? Let's share those experiences in the comments below. You never know who you might inspire just by sharing your story. If this video has helped you feel seen or sparked a thought you hadn't considered, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like more conversations like this, ones that honor where you are in life and gently invite you to grow, hit that subscribe button and join our little community. We're here to support each other, one slow step at a time. Remember, it's not about doing life perfectly. It's about doing it purposefully. And there is so much joy waiting for you, not at the finish line, but right here, in the gentle rhythm of the everyday. Wishing you deep peace, warm moments, and the courage to live life at your own beautiful pace. You've got this.